How could you think you're not going to need him when you played Josh Johnson in the NFC Championship game last year, right? So, like, he is a safety net, blah, 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 all of that. You're not just giving him away for a fifth.
You've already paid the bonus. He already knows your offense. You might as well keep working with him. I think there's a lot of ways to justify it where if we don't get a top 50 pick, which I can't see happening, I cannot. And when I say a top 50 pick, that'd be somewhere between like 40 and 50, right? Because you're not getting you're not going in the first round. So, some pick in the second round, you could even just argue the entire second round because people trade around. I think you'd probably have to do that because I do think you'd have to bet. On my stock analogy, I had a decent amount invested at DraftKings, and it was another one that kind of fell. It's come storming back, and I'm close to even. I mean, I'm at $24 is what I basically own it all at. It was down to 12, and I'm like, this thing could go down to like 5. And it is today like $22. And I'm like, I think the right move is if it hits $24 and I'm just even just get out, you won. And I wonder if you can think about it like that if you're the 49ers, like, there's a very good chance if someone's willing to offer us pick, let's just say the way trades work out, pick 60 for Trey Lance, that in 6 months, if Darnold beats him out, Purdy comes back and he's our third, and it was up and down during training camp, and obviously he didn't even win the backup job, that he is now worth pick 200. We're just going to give him away for a sixth. So there's a value of, like, ideally he's worth something to us in the offseason on the chance that turns his career around, becomes the starter, takes the bull by the horns, and fucking looks sweet. But we think that's such a small percentage of happening. Do we just take the kind of the bird in the hand that we look at as like kind of a close to a bald eagle based on his resume, right? Because his resume, I think a team would take some heat, like if they gave up a second round. Like, you better be pretty good. Like, think about players that go for second round picks, like Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, usually at quarterbacks, Matt Schaub once upon a time. Like, you get starting quarterbacks sometimes that are backups historically for like second round picks. Alex Smith.
The guys that would get the least amount of heat are Rand Carthen and D'Amico Ryans. D'Amico would get the least amount of heat, right? Because Houston has 2 first-round picks. So Houston is the one I think that could – now their second-round pick is the 33rd pick, which is actually, in this draft, the 32nd pick of the draft.
Yeah. Because
Miami forfeited their first rounder. 2 almost retired.
Historically, like one of the best, the Nick Chubbs, the Debos, they go right. Derek Carrs, they go like right there.
Can you do this trade? I guess you just do it for value, but can you trade him on draft night for pick 60? Like, let me rephrase that. Can you trade him for pick 60 on Wednesday? Or do you have to wait till the second round and kind of know, like, all right, pick 60, there's something there we kind of like?
I just think pick 60 never gets traded till draft day.
Yeah. So,
unless it's like, I guess sometimes with a player, right? If I trade, a veteran player, like Jalen Ramsey got traded for a third-round pick, that pick is a number, right? That pick was 74, whatever where that arbitrary number is in the draft. It feels like this situation, I guess, yes, definitely possible now thinking about it. I'd be a little stunned if it didn't happen till draft night, because part of it, if you're a team, do we take a quarterback? Do we draft a quarterback with one of those high picks?
Well, is Houston going to trade back from number 2 and not take a quarterback?
I mean, I think rumors are that Houston's just going to take a player at 2 if Bryce Young goes 1 and not take a quarterback. Because hasn't D'Amico learned, like, why force it?
12?
Build your team? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, to me, that's where you can go, is 33 a little too rich? Yeah, but I know the guy. I like the guy. Let's just play him. We can't get a prospect like him at 33. If you're the Texans, right? You're like, we can't get a prospect like him at 33. And let's just give him a year. D'Amico has coached against him. I think
knows the offense. Right?
I think D'Amico has kind of that's right. Knows some of the offensive staff. I think D'Amico's got enough rope where he could, like, no one would. The heat would not get turned up to 10 on D'Amico if he traded for him.
I agree, because not a great draft. So you go, well, it's not like there are a ton of first-round picks at 33. We get a guy. We basically get a 2-year window to mess with him to see what he's got. And we already know him, the person. I do think the 49ers, I think they would trade him yesterday for pick 33.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree. And I think, and like I said, I think it's risky. I think it's a little, just in the sense that, like, you might end up putting him on a football field this year if you keep him.
I haven't
But
thought it was going to happen, and I know people have talked about it. It's been a talking point. I don't think we've hammered it home too much. Beside this, we've just kind of been saying consistently, like, it just makes sense to write it out based on that we didn't think they were going to get much. I do think that trading him now in a week is on the table. And I didn't think I believed that till once you start like, well, these reports are coming out. And like you said, now they've seen Purdy. I bet the doc's like, I think he's going to be fine. You know, you already like Sam Darnold. A couple years ago, you've been following his career. I mean, they're fucking signing Panthers left and right, defensive coordinator trading for McCaffrey. Like, they feel the Panthers got a bunch of valued assets that they've taken. So maybe they have moved on. And it's just an, in a weird way, and it's not his fault. It's not his fault, right? He didn't pick himself. They picked him. It was a risky pick just based on his limited playing experience. His school didn't play, the whole situation. But like, there is an element with him around that just creates a constant story, right? It just does. It's consistently just one of the bigger stories. We even said it was one of the bigger stories at the owners' meetings, like Trey Lance. Just getting asked about Trey Lance. It consistently stays one of the. He's a way bigger story, for example, than like Zach Wilson. I never fucking see anything about Zach Wilson. It's like Zach Wilson's just dead. Trey Lance is still like a store. It's still like this churning thing.
yeah,
You know.
and once Brock Purdy's healthy, the Niners then would have, without thinking about it, the most famous third string quarterback in the NFL, either Darnold or Trey Lance. Like, third string quarterback, even though they got to their third string quarterback last year, is we're talking about one of these guys not being in pads on game day, right? You could say that's a waste to have Sam Darnold or Trey Lance in street clothes on game day.
Yeah. The only reason it's not is because, like you just mentioned, everyone's just going to go back where you could lose 7 quarterbacks in any
Right,
given
and which
game.
is why I would not trade him for a 4th round pick.
I probably wouldn't either, unless they're very, very confident. We're like, we missed on this pick.
Yeah, that's true. And we've seen him in practice, but they've seen him every single day. And been
I could
around
like
every
him,
single
and
day.
I think you would be doing it'd be like gross negligence to not trade him and I don't think this pick would even be on the table. I think the Texans would try to give you like 2/3, but like for pick 33, I think you would have to do that deal, right?
Yeah, or you could see it being like Trey and pick 10. Could you see like Trey and pick 101 for pick 33? Like, Niners have 3 comp thirds.
I would do that in a heartbeat.
To me, this trade sometimes, like, what I'm bracing myself for is like the Niners have traded Trey Lance. Like, oh my God, what'd they get? It's like a 4th and a guard. Right? I like if I told you a player is coming back.
Feels
I
like
don't know
more
if
likely
Houston would
they'd
be
get
thinking
like a D
nickel.
tackle.
Or okay, yeah. Feels like a nickel is always involved in these trades.
Yeah, because they got Banks and Burford. Brendel resigned. Maybe like a swing tackle I could see, but those guys usually don't get traded.
Wasn't there a good nickel when the football team traded for Alex Smith to the Chiefs? Wasn't it like, oh, the nickel that the Chiefs got? Like,
Yeah, it was the Virginia Tech corner's brother, Fuller. Yeah, they traded Alex Smith in like a second, and they got back a second in Fuller or something.
Yeah.
And Veach was like, "We love this nickel since he was a sophomore in college."
It's always a nickel in these trades.
I love it when you trade for a player and it's like, "We loved him coming out. We've been eyeballing this guy for 7 years." GMs love saying that. Like, we've been keeping our eye on this guy. We loved him. It didn't fall the way we wanted in the draft, but we never lost our love.
RP, would you trade Trey for a 4th and a Minshew level player, solid backup who can start if need be? I would not. I would just draft another quarterback.
I am glad that they did not. I would wonder if Purdy, like, they were pretty confident that Purdy was going to be out for the season if the Trey Lance Cousins things would have came to fruition, because I bet there would have been like a 50-50 chance that it would have. Because Kyle would have been a little desperate. He ain't trying to lose, especially if, like, we will trade you Kirk Cousins, I think. And it'd be easy to justify. Like, listen, Purdy's out. We got this opportunity to get a guy who 100% is ready to go. I think they'd do that deal. Like, if Purdy legitimately just ripped his elbow and was like 100%, no questions asked, like, out for the year. It's like, this is going to be an 18-month recovery or something. I think Kirk Cousins is on this team right now. Because clearly the Vikings are
Yeah.
like, yeah, we ain't going to resign
We're
him.
done.
Fuck it. We'll just pivot, which I think is kind of bold. Like, guys, you just won 13 games. More than likely, you'll win 10 or 11 again. Like, if I was a Minnesota Vikings fan, like, what's our plan, fellas? Like,
Something about Kirk just makes teams more than happy to move on from him,
we're just a little bit
even
of a
when he's like
know-it-all.
been good for them.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
You know what? It'll be if they trade Trey Lance for a pick that we think is a second or maybe even a third. That's a pretty unique situation for a team to trade a quarterback that has that level of value when their other quarterbacks are not established at all. To somebody, and I guess maybe somebody in the chat said Shane Steichen just worked with Jalen Hurts. Yeah, maybe he's the coach at Indianapolis now. But to me, Houston just feels like such a match. It'd be like, did those guys like him more, or do the Niners actually kind of like him? It's just a situation where, I don't know, they're on the Oregon Trail and they've got a bunch of pelts, warm furs, and somebody else says, I got to stop and build a brick house, and you got all the bricks and you're cold and I got pelts, and I'll trade you some pelts for some bricks. I just need what you have and you just want what I have, and I don't need it, right? I don't need it. Maybe. But it would be it's a pretty dramatic thing to still kind of like a quarterback, but also be willing to trade him when your guy, and we love Brock Purdy here. I mean, it was undeniable how good he was last year, but he is a guy who's played half a season. Forget that he's a 7th round pick too. I mean, if he was a 3rd round pick, he's a guy that's played half a season coming off an elbow surgery.
Yeah.
This is a pretty wild situation.
Well, everything they're doing they're in a risky situation because they don't have an established thing, But it's kind of the NFL. Eagles break off Jalen. Now it's harder to build a team, right? I mean, they think they lose a bunch of guys this offseason because obviously they got to invest in the court. Like, it's just part of the league. A lot of moves are risky. It's just when you have a good coach, when you have good nucleus, you just think that you'll be able to overcome it. And the Niners are really testing this theory out. But I also think that they justify it like, we'd be no loss if Trey started 17 games. Like, he could not be good. And if they were to trade him, I think they would be acknowledging that they believe that he's just not good enough.
Yeah.
Been a wild story. I mean, I think the two main themes of this today, of Draymond and Trey, the cool part about sports, like, you can't make some of this shit up. I mean, you can't make up the 49ers making that historic trade, the biggest trade they've ever made in franchise history, and now almost, I guess this would be 3 drafts away, right? He was drafted. He was in a draft, then there was a draft, and then this will be the next draft. The way it's kind of played out in the situation where you're sitting, you can't make it up. You can't make. If I would have told you Draymond Green got suspended, you would have been like, God, did he fucking swing at someone on the Kings? No, he actually kicked. It's the best part. It's the one pitch that sports has over everything. It's like all the time new shit happens. You're like, God damn, didn't see that coming. I tell you that, if I just told you last year, you know what, Trey Lance is on the Texans with DeMeco Ryans coaching them 2 years ago, you're like, what?
Draymond got suspended is not the most unbelievable thing you could suggest.
No, it's not. But if you would have been like, well, how did he get suspended?
Oh, yeah,
did he shove a guy to the ground? Did he
stomp onto his chest?
Did he grab a fan by the neck? Did he, podcast at halftime talking a bunch of shit? I don't know. You could have had 18 different outcomes that would not have been foot to the sternum.
Yeah.
Chest cavity.
Right. Like, how did he end up? How he went? Although.
Then he called the entire crowd pussies, which I enjoyed. But
yeah,
someone had a still shot of Adam Silver sitting watching it, and he looked pretty angry,
seething.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think to finish your scenario on Trey, as wild as it is, and have all that stuff happen, and the team not only not implode but somehow thrive. Right, when you miss on the 3rd overall pick, it usually sets you back. So how do you get another quarterback? We talk about it all the time. It is so hard to get these guys.
But I think good organizations, you get a lot of credit for missing and moving. Like, miss and move, right? The Eagles doubled down on Carson Wentz, gave him a ton of money. A couple years later, they had pivoted, no problem, and they got a sweet quarterback.
Yeah.
The Chiefs drafted this first-round running back, Clyde. It just doesn't work out. Within a couple years, they win a Super Bowl with fucking 7th-round Pacheco, and he looks like, goddamn, this guy's leading rusher next year. You know, it's just the best part about the NFL. It is of the sports, the easiest just to pivot because you can just hit on random draft picks. You just can get random like practice squad guys that can become solid starters. It's just guys just kind of come. You know, there's just randos everywhere, always. You just got to find a couple of them a year.
John on the stream says 4 out of 6 years with Kyle Shanahan, we've played 3 QBs. It's the norm now.